Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to play through the changes on a blues chord progression using just one scale, and specifically how to play over the kind of version of the 12-bar blues that swing and jump blues players use. If you want to check out a note-for-note transcription of the chorus that I just played, you can click on the link below or on screen and sign up for my newsletter, and you can get your hands on the tab for the solo and check it all out note for note. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about some basic ideas about how to improvise like that and what some of the sort of highlights are that you want to hit and how it's all going to work. So basically, we're in B flat, and the thing about playing on a swing or jump blues version of the blues is that when you get to the turnaround, instead of playing from the 5 chord to the 4 chord to the 1 chord, you play, starting in bar 9, the 2 chord, in this case C minor 7, to the 5 chord, F7 or some kind of version of that, and then back to B flat. So you've got this different moment here, going from 2 to 5 to 1 instead of going 5, 4, 1. But there's really 4 places in the tune that you want to kind of spell things out. The whole idea of playing the changes means that rather than, I mean, I know I called the lesson playing the changes with one scale, but the scale we're going to use is different from just taking like a minor pentatonic or a blues scale and sort of pouring it over all the chords. In this case, playing the changes really means that you highlight certain notes based on what chord you're on. And we're going to take one scale, one collection of notes, and pull out and emphasize different notes of that scale depending on what chord we're on. So if you're on B flat, the most important notes to play in your solo to spell out the fact that you're on B flat are the root, the 3rd, and the 5th of B flat. If you're on E flat, the 4 chord, that's going to change because you're on a different chord. And if you play the root and the 3rd and the 5th of B flat over E flat, something's going to be a little weird. And same thing for when you get to the 2 chord and the 5 chord. So the scale that we're going to use is something that I call the swing scale, which is these notes. And there's a few different ways you can think about it. But basically it's the root, the flat 3rd, the 3rd, the 4th, the flat 5th, the 5th, the 6th, the flat 7, the root, and the 9th of B flat in this case. And there's other ways to think about it. If you took a major pentatonic scale in B flat and a B flat blues scale, and you laid them on top of each other, you'd get this combination of notes that I just played. Or if you took a Mixolydian scale and you added in the flat 3rd and the flat 5 from the blues scale, you'd also get this scale. And I call it the swing scale just because when I started to listen to people like Charlie Christian and Tiny Grimes and figure out the kinds of licks they were playing, it seemed to be based on these kinds of sounds. So in my head, that's always just the handle that I've given it, and I think it helps to have a handle for something. Eventually, you'll just get to where you kind of recognize the flavor and the taste of those notes, regardless of what you call it. But as we go through, I think you'll see a lot of familiar sounds coming along with the scale. So when you're on the 1 chord, the important notes to emphasize are going to be the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, but particularly this move from the flat 3 to the 3, and then using either the 6 or the flat 7 or some combination on top. And those are all real classic swing riff kind of licks. And the main thing is that they resolve to the 3rd or to the root, to the fifth. They resolve to a chord tone, one of the three chord tones of B flat, root, third, or fifth. Now when you get to the 4 chord, just staying in the same position and using the same collection of notes, you can emphasize different notes and really start to spell out the sound of E flat. So for instance, if you just drop the major third to the flat third and play some of the same licks, so if you take a lick, that works over B flat. If now you slide from the second to the flat third, now you're playing the 5th, flat 7, and 9th of E flat. And so you hear this all the time in like big band riffs and small group riffs from the 30s and 40s. You hear it in the playing of people like Charlie Christian, you hear it in T-Bone Walker. Right, T-Bone Shuffle then. So it's that change from the 1 to the 4 to the 1. So that's one way to think about it. And if you even go up to the 6th of this B flat scale, now you've got the root, now you've got the 5th, flat 7, root, 9, and 3 of E flat. So, and you can go down here to get the 3rd, again, of E flat. So there's the beginning of those Charlie Christian licks. That kind of sound, where you're really just arpeggiating a 9th chord with the 6th or the 13th on top, chromatically down. So you can spell out the E flat using these notes from this B flat swing scale. You can also just revert to the B flat blues scale that's kind of hiding in this swing scale. And that works great over E flat because here again, you've got the 5th, flat 7, and root of E flat. And it sounds great. So you could be playing and so when you go from the brighter major sound of the over the B flat and then and back to the major again on the 1 chord. So that's the 1 and the 4 basically. Let's jump ahead to the 5 chord. And instead of worrying about spelling out the 5, we're going to take advantage of the fact that these bluesy sounding licks from the 1 chord, from this scale, and just playing the blues scale itself, as long as you land on the major third at the end, you can get away with playing a lot of darker blues sounds. Right? Or and so when you're on the 5, you can play B flat blues licks as long as, and then if for a bar of the F chord, you play B flat blues and then resolve it to the major third when you get back to the 1 chord, it will create the feeling, it'll create a feeling of tension and suspense because you're playing wrong or bluesy over the 5, not spelling out the 5 chord. But when you land back on the 1, it'll give a feeling of resolution. So right, so now here's where the action comes for playing over the 2 chord. Hidden in this scale are notes that will spell out the 2 chord, in this case C minor 7. If we go here to the 4th of B flat, and then the 6th, and then the root, all of B flat, that is going to sound over the C minor like the flat 3rd, the 5th, and the flat 7 of the C minor chord, right? And for whatever reason, it sounds hipper to play over the 2 chord starting on the 3rd, or basically anything but the root. It sounds better to start your licks from the flat 3rd or the 5th or the 7th than to start right on the root, like right on the nose of what you're doing. So we can then connect these chord tones up with scale steps from the home scale we're using, this B flat scale. Right? Or we can play it down here. If if we think about this as the fourth of B flat, so here's C minor, here's the root. Here's the flat third, the fifth, and the flat seven of C minor, and you can see they're all coming out of this same basic scale. Here's the, in terms of B flat, here's the fourth, and the sixth, and the root of B flat. So, and so the weird thing is, I don't know if it's weird, but I mean, it was weird to me because I always thought, oh, you're supposed to play like 2 and then 5, spell them out. But when I listened to people really playing, a lot of times you would hear these licks like, right? So they'd play over the 2, and then the 5 would come along, and they'd do that thing of playing a blues lick, a B flat blues lick, to take them home, and it would resolve. So there is no 2-5, it's 2 to a blues lick and then back to 1. So now we've got all the apparatus just in this one scale. We can play the major third over the 1 chord, along with the 6th and 7, and then we can spell out E flat or play blues, and then back to the 1 with the major third. And now here's our 2, and then a B flat blues lick to take you home. So that is what I mean by saying you can use this one scale to play the changes on the blues. So check it out. Again, if you sign up for the newsletter at the links, you can download the tab for the opening solo that I played, and then hopefully go through the rest of the lesson and recognize a lot of the things that are in there. So I hope you enjoy working on that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.